Where you invest your time really defines your life. It's what your habits are. It's what you are stating is important. It's where you're giving that most important resource.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Reach Your Prime podcast. I'm your host, Jared Barnes, incredibly excited to host Dr. Phil Wagner, the founder and CEO of Sparta Science. Dr. Wagner, man, I could probably go on and do a whole nother podcast just about your accomplishments and everything that Sparta has been able to achieve, which I definitely want to hit. But we want to learn more about you, about your journey, going all the way back from when you were growing up as a young athlete, but faced a lot of different injuries that led you onto this cycle to getting into the field you're in now. So, Dr. Wagner, if you could just, a brief synopsis of your story and what led you to being part of this movement that is called Sparta Science.
Great. Yeah, thank you. It really began, as an athlete, I think like a lot of people growing up, just a natural way to start building friendships and also I think opportunities to learn how to be part of a team and grow with a team, and really enjoyed that process. But I think one of the challenges was that I began to get injured quite a bit and in different areas. So, that opportunity to be part of a team and really excel and grow as an individual athlete was halted because I was just physically unable to be involved. And, along that way became really interested in the human body for a couple reasons. One, physically, I'm not the best athlete. And so was always looking for ways to try to improve my own performance. But then also, as these injuries started to occur, was also shocked at how much randomness and guesswork seemed to be involved with the process, whether that was from a coach or a therapist or a physician. And really, everybody had the best intentions, but ultimately it came down to guessing. So wanted to really explore that more. So became a strength and conditioning coach myself after college with the idea that I was going to help and learn from others, but was exposed to, at that point, the realities of sports, which is you're held subject to wins and losses. And so as a result, I had a couple experiences where the football team didn't win and we were let go as a football staff and went on to the next gig and really saw kind of my future being that if I couldn't change it, it was going to be that 2 to 3 year stint at every place. And so got out of the field of coaching and really wanted to learn as much as I could about the human body. So went to medical school, which was a very hard choice and one that was not made likely of going into a field that I ultimately wasn't going to practice traditionally in. But at the same time, offered an incredible opportunity to be challenged and really learn how diseases are addressed with data, with kind of best practices, and how that approach could potentially be applied to a preventative or a rehab situation. So when I got out of medical school was kind of at this time, where data and big data was starting to be talked about and how we could leverage information from different people and use that to improve lives. The Silicon Valley is certainly renowned for a lot of things, good and bad. One of the good areas is just the incredible depth of technology knowledge here. Took all this clinical experience that I had as a physician, as an athlete, as a coach, and really set up an area where I could learn how to build a technology company and work with other technologists in this area to build a platform to truly help everyone that wanted to be active in a certain pursuit, really help identify that and ultimately, provide a higher quality of life to individuals. So that's kind of, I guess, a 10,000 foot view of that journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And, I heard some themes as you were sharing parts of your journey where you had this ability to not only learn, but to adapt and then adapt that information and find ways to leverage it and apply it to a certain subset or a certain market or a certain niche. I think that's an incredibly valuable skill. Where do you think that ability or even just that thought process, where do you think that came from?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before, but you're right in that the word learning kept coming up. I think it probably is rooted, and I've never made this connection. And my mom was a teacher, very into teaching at the high school and college level. And I think so education and learning was really instilled at an early age for me as something that was central. Just participating in sports just only reinforced that of, okay, you learn, you adapt, and the end result should be something better. That iterative process of learning and adapting and subsequently improving was really a process I got addicted to. And how can we do that for everyone and really actually inspire everybody to want to learn more as well?
And, we have a lot of athletic directors, a lot of head coaches who listen to this podcast, and so how have you led others in that process? I think it's one thing to lead ourselves, especially when we're ambitious or, we have these foundational experiences that provide that context for us. But how have you led others kind of in that time of uncertainty or transition, or just kind of in this, startup environment where there's a rapid sense of change, or, you mentioned just the win-loss, it can almost flip in an instant, and I think ADs and head coaches deal with the exact same thing. How have you led others in those phases?
One of the key pieces I think for learning in a way is you almost get better at learning as you get older is you realize how little we all know still, and how a lot of things use the word foundational. A lot of principles are foundational and we accept them, and we often don't challenge them. And so I think, really encouraging people that are in the administration, athletic directors, coaches, to challenge foundational norms, in order to learn and improve is a key piece. A good example is, I think everyone has at some point used or heard of the mnemonic RICE, rest,
Mm-hmm.
ice, compression, elevation, right? And it's something that continues to be perpetuated by sports medicine and really Dr. Google and other kind of pseudo approaches to treating injuries. And the reality is that clearly ice inhibits recovery. That is
Mm-hmm.
clear in the research. So what we thought was really important, ice, the I part of rice, is completely counterproductive. And it's still prescribed because that's what is accepted. It feels better, so it must be right. But by actually constricting the blood vessels, we inhibit healing factors getting to the area that's injured. So a great
Mm-hmm.
example of something that's a foundational norm that we need to be questioning. Another piece is rest. The R is also completely wrong. They've found that actually to prolong healing and actually risk re-injury of ACL, if you want to risk that re-injuring of the ACL, put people in a brace, make them inactive. So rest, whether we're talking about a back injury, a concussion, an ACL, rest is another counterproductive foundational norm that we need to be questioning. And so I think working alongside administrators and coaches to expose some of this to make improvements has been a way to kind of inspire that learning.
That's great, and I think that's a perfect transition point because I'm actually been reading this book. It's called Late Bloomers. It's by a gentleman named Rich Colgard, and the subtitle is "The Power of Patience in a World Obsessed with Early Achievement." As soon as I saw that subtitle, I was like, you know what? I think I can stop reading right there because that was enough for
Yeah.
me. But that concept of being able to question, but also question at the right time, I think that's definitely something, listeners need to hone in on. And I think for my next question is, what do you know now that you'd maybe not have understand early in your career where you had ambition and wanted to achieve things, but what is it that you know now that you didn't always understand early on?
From a broad view, I would probably say, everybody has a default mode, and mine is to grind. Put your head down and go. And, to work harder and kind of relying on that principle of, well, I'll just outwork everybody. But I think as I've, gotten older and maybe challenges have become greater, you realize that working smarter is a far better opportunity and that you don't get points for effort. Although it's commendable, working harder and having more effort with lower or similar results is not always and generally not the best approach. And so, yeah, talking to my younger self would be really relying on bring others in who are better at this than you in certain situations, or taking a step back and thinking, is this the best strategy or the best priority of focus? Because how you sequence what you do is such a
Mm-hmm.
critical piece. We can't do
Mm-hmm.
everything at once. We're all aware that multitasking at this point has been disproven as really something that exists. And so if you're going to focus, you have to choose what the right sequence of priorities are ultimately around a grander strategy.
So fast forward until now, what have you done to almost prioritize the main thing and keep the main thing the main thing? Because I can only imagine how many directions you're being pulled, and you're on podcasts like this, you're doing interviews, you're traveling. I just saw you were just in London overseas and doing all these incredible things. But how have you kept the main thing the main thing?
Yeah, I think probably from a tactical standpoint or a tangible standpoint, which really helps for me, is to see it written or organized in a very concrete format. It's all about the calendar. To me, the calendar is a physical representation of what is all of ours most limiting resource, which is time.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at anybody's calendar, their diary, whatever it may be, it really reflects where they're placing their priorities, because where you invest your time really defines your life. It's what your habits are, it's what you are stating is important, it's where you're giving that most important resource. So I spend quite a bit of time, in the morning and at the end of the day, confirming and rearranging that calendar, to make sure that my overall goals, my overall strategy for the company, for our team, is being addressed in that way. And that's through a pretty obsessive usage of the calendar. But it's also, I think, involving my team, people on my team, to also being a sanity check of, hey, this is where I should be spending my time, right? Because I think a thing that I had to learn was that really making time for yourself to do the things that only you can do, but delegating the things where other people can do or other people are better at. And I think doing everything is not being a good teammate, and really doing the
Mm.
things that only you can do. The analogy I use internally, because I've seen it in sports at least, is there's quite a few instances where Tom Brady is throwing blocks for his running back, for his receivers. And he does it because he is a good team player and he wants to block to see the play be successful. But in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't help the team, if he's blocking, because his job is to do what he does best, which is to throw and lead the offense. And anything that jeopardizes that really has to be limited. And it's the same way in anyone's life, looking at where are those areas that you're doing things that shouldn't be where you focus. And I think the calendar for me is a concrete representation of that.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think the fruits show exactly like you said earlier in the level of execution and not
Mm,
necessarily in the effort. While the effort is great, it shows up in just that level of execution. And I
right.
think that's a testament to where Sparta Science is at now. And you're working with teams in the NFL, NBA, MLS, college sports, and expanding even, outside of sports, which I think is absolutely incredible. And so just to give our listeners a little bit deeper dive and more context into the world of Sparta Science, would you like to just briefly explain kind of the core product and the heart of what you guys are doing to not only solve injuries, but truly prevent them in a way that hasn't necessarily been done before?
Yeah, I think Sparta ultimately, the product is a culmination of my own personal experiences on how do we really identify what the body's inefficiencies are to movement. How do we
Mm-hmm.
identify that objectively? And then what's the best way to approach it? It's a very medical based approach of, let's identify the disease with data and let's treat the disease with prescriptions. In this case, the data is not blood, it's what we call a force plate, which measures how an individual interacts with the ground. And instead of medical prescriptions, it's exercises. How long, how much, how often, and how do we hone that down to be very accurate for every individual to live a fuller and longer life?
The concept is absolutely incredible. And I think it stems from everything we were just talking about, that ability to learn, to see a gap, and then to create a solution, but not just a solution, but one that can be executed and scaled beyond just ourselves. So what are you most proud of about not just Sparta Science or the product, but everything that's been able to be accomplished to this point?
I'm most proud of how we've been able to build that team in both a diverse yet connected way. We have people ranging from 20-year-olds to 60-year-olds within the organization, from ex-professional athletes to people that have never seen a professional game on TV. So it's such a diverse group, yet one that shares some very core principles. So I think that balance in evolution is the thing that I am most proud of where we're at today.
Yeah. And I wasn't anticipating this question, but I want to follow up because you mentioned the diversity of thought and experience, which I think is phenomenal. And diversity is one of those big buzzwords out right now. And it's something everyone talks about. But at the end of the day, we all have a job to do. So what are some things that you have done to really take that diversity, and mesh that into cohesion and ultimately organizational efficiency?
Yeah, I think, I've never really, been a big proponent or either way, positive or negative, about diversity. And I think that is because really, at the end of the day, what I care about is results. And
Yeah.
if you're going to deliver results, it doesn't matter the age, the gender, the ethnicity of the individual. And so if your key focus is results, then all of it goes out the window. It's the best person for the job.
Yeah.
And I think with that in mind, it makes it easy to have a diverse organization because you can't possibly build an organization without that. And I think also the other thing that helps is coming from a sports background, no coach, no general manager, no individual wants a team where everybody does the same thing. The best organizations have experts in each position. You got a guy who can run fast, a guy that can throw the ball far, a guy who can block, a guy who can tackle, and they each have their own skill sets. And there's a lot of diversity built into that. And I think the other piece was, with a lot of diversity being spoken about in the workplace, particularly, it's mainly been around ethnicity or gender. But, there's such a large opportunity for diversity of age and experience too. We've got 60-year-olds in our organization and we've got 20-year-olds. That is much more of a diversity than gender or ethnicity because the experience factor is so different, not only in how they grew up, but how they're interacting with the world. And that to me has just been incredibly valuable for our growth.
I think you hit it right on the head there. Being able to look at results first based around, again, exactly like you said earlier, keeping the main thing, and are we getting there in the best way possible? And do we have the best people for that job? So I genuinely appreciate those responses. In this last section of the podcast, we just call final thoughts. If you had an opportunity to have one more tweet to humanity and then out of nowhere, Twitter just got shut down and nobody knew what happened, what would that message be around?
At our core, we were all designed to be mobile individuals, mobile human beings, and whether that's in something organized or something that is more informal, that really lies at the core of a fuller life. And I think we all need to be encouraging and empowering each other to be moving more, making that part of our daily habits, routines, and potentially even hobbies or occupations. And it's something that with data and the rise of technology we've gotten away from, and we've got to get back to ensuring that we're moving in a healthy and progressive way every day.
I agree. And final question here, if you could define your journey, your life journey to this point, in one word or one phrase, what would that be and why?
Yeah, I think we had chatted about this before, but I would actually probably use the same word, which is unbelievable. And sometimes that word is sensationalized too much and loses its power. The root of that is that passion, but I think once you find that passion, the things that you're able to do as a person, as a team, truly become unbelievable.
Unbelievable it is. Well, Dr. Wagner, thank you so much for your time. Guys, please be sure to check out the show notes where there's more information about Sparta Science, where you can learn more. But again, Dr. Wagner, thank you again. I thought this was really, really valuable and appreciate your time.
Thank you. That was great. Appreciate it, Jared.